Hello, welcome to week 3 of hybrid learning. So this week's going to be really fun. And as always, I always start the video with this. If you're watching this, it's because you were absent on either one or both of our synchronous days on campus. So this is week 3. Our schedule for this week, we have the week 3 Google Slides, and then for your asynchronous assignments, you have to read chapter 4 because we'll be reading chapter 3 in class. And then there is a video, I'm just calling it Trevor and his grandma. There's a video that I'm going to have you watch and some questions I want you to respond to based off of that video, and I think you'll like it. It's going to be a chance for you to actually get to see his grandma, who he talks about a few times in the novel, and to see a little bit of where he grew up. So to start, go ahead and pause this video and respond to these questions. This is to reflect on chapter 2. Chapter 2 was the chapter you read for asynchronous work last week for week 2. So I want you to tell me, how did Patricia meet Trevor's dad? How did his parents meet? And what does Trevor think about his parents? How does he describe their relationship? So go ahead and pause this video and do that. Okay, so you should have responded to these questions. So let's kind of do some review on chapter 2 and what we read. So in this chapter, Trevor talks about the segregation that was happening during apartheid and how based off of your race and your skin color, you were put into certain categories and could or could not do certain things. And then he gives the example of his mom and how his mom was kind of able to work her way into being a secretary, even though that wasn't really an option for Black women specifically, which is what she is. And so as she found a way to make that happen, she had to pretend to be a maid in order to live in town and work as a secretary so that she didn't have to commute every day. And then he also talks about just the backstory of his parents and how they met, Patricia and Robert. He talks about how Robert is an expat, which means he is living in a country that he's not from. That's the term. And Patricia basically proposes to him to have a baby because she wants a child, and she doesn't necessarily want to get married or to be in a relationship with him, but she wants to be a mom. And so they kind of work out this arrangement, and that's what happens. Which is essentially why this book is called Born a Crime, because she was Black and he was white, and for them to have a child together, that was technically illegal during that time. And then he kind of ends the chapter by talking about how, because it was very obvious that he was mixed, he was biracial, he could not really be seen in public until apartheid ended. And he was, if you recall from chapter 1, he was about 6 years old when Mandela was freed from prison. So for the very first few years of his life, he was not really allowed to be out in public. So he had to kind of go around that and be a little sneaky, a little tricky. Okay, so that was the review. Now let's talk about your final projects. I'm telling you about this way ahead of time because it's not due until June 14th, and this week is the last week of April. So I'm giving you almost a month and a half warning advance. I'm telling you what the assignment is. You're going to have all the information you need so that you can be aware as we're reading the book and be kind of thinking about what you want to do, because I'm giving you a choice. So you can choose, and you only need to complete one of the following for your final project for this unit. Number 1, you could choose to write an EQ essay, or you could choose to create a time capsule. So I'm giving you the option to kind of pick something that is more interesting to you. Some of you love writing, and writing an essay does not freak you out. You would rather do that than something else. Some of you, writing a long essay, or not even a long essay, but just writing essays in general is not your thing, and you want to be a little bit more creative. So I'm giving you this option of the time capsule. So it's totally up to you. Either way, whichever way you pick, you're going to have the option, or you're going to have the ability to demonstrate to me those standards and those skills that you have built up over the quarter. So, and with that as well, there's going to be honors options for each option. So if you click on the link here. This will take you to the rubric for each one. So let me show you what the rubric is. First for the essay. So for the essay, the goal is that you will be, it's called an EQ essay because you're going to be answering our essential questions, which is, to what extent is our identity shaped by culture and society, and how does empathy change the way we view others? So those are going to be the questions you're going to try to answer. And in doing so, you need to be able to cite examples from the text. You need to be able to kind of analyze and determine your own explanation of things using information from the text and being able to cite that. So those are the standards in yellow. So this is what you need to have. These are your checkmark list. You need to have a clear introduction, you need to have a concluding paragraph, and you need to have a reference list with the sources that you're using. I need to see at least a minimum of 3 examples from the text. So you could do this in the form of paraphrasing and then citing where you're paraphrasing. You could do this in the form of direct quotes. You could do both. But I need to have at least 3 throughout the whole essay. And then I'm doing you a favor. I'm going to ask that it be an APA format. I know that probably up until this point you've only ever been asked to do MLA, but I promise you, despite what your teachers may have told you that you're going to do MLA when you get to college, from my experience, if you go to college, they're going to ask you to do APA format like 90% of the time. So I'm going to help you figure out what that looks like. And then I've linked the example that I have here, which I'm going to show you in just a second. The honors option, if you were to choose the essay, is to do everything above, and then in addition, you're going to compare and contrast a story from Trevor Noah's novel, from his life, to a story in your own life. Kind of show maybe how you're similar, how you're different, to kind of further explain and analyze the essential questions that we have. And the total needs to be a minimum of 3 pages long if you're going to do honors, 2 pages if you're doing just regular. So that's the rubric for the essay. For the time capsule, your rubric looks like this. So the idea behind this is that you're going to, in a hypothetical situation, you are going to create a time capsule for Trevor Noah on his behalf. So now that at this point you've read the entire book, you have to decide what you think is the most important things to put in a time capsule to represent his childhood in South Africa. And you are going to be doing this in a creative way using some visual images, citing things from the text. I would suggest that you use Canva. This is what I would ask of you. If you are not familiar with this, don't worry. I will show you how to use it. It's super easy. It's really fun. I use it all the time, and it's free. If you're thinking, you know what, I really love to draw, I really love to paint, art is my thing, you could also do that as well, as long as you meet the requirements in the rubric. So it's one or the other, but I would suggest that Canva would probably be the route to go. So again, it's the same standards. You're going to be able to analyze what the text says and draw specific evidence from that, citing it. You're going to analyze the two, or you're going to be able to kind of synthesize and summarize his childhood in a way by creating this time capsule. So this is what it needs. Again, you need to either do Canva or on like an actual paper version. There needs to be a minimum of 5 items that represent things from his childhood. And that can be, that has to be a picture or an image paired with something from the text itself. And then when you do a reference list, because you need to, even though it's not an essay, I'm also asking for APA format. If you're doing honors, you are going to create a mini time capsule for your own childhood. So again, it's going to look pretty similar, but it's in terms of the format of it, but it's your own childhood. So pictures and icons and quotes to represent your childhood. So think about things that are important to you, things that represent you, at least in this moment so far. And for your mini time capsule, it needs to have 3 items. So let me show you some examples. So if you go to this slide, I have linked examples of kind of what I'm looking for. And I want to tell you that for both of these, I didn't do a full complete example because I didn't want to kind of take away from something that you might want to include. And I didn't want you to just copy everything that I did because that's not showing me that you learned anything, right? So let me show you. First for the essay. Oops. And I know this might seem like a lot of information and you're kind of maybe feeling overwhelmed, but don't worry, we're going to work on this. I'm going to give you a work week and a work day, and we're going to just get through it together. I'm going to show you everything. So this is the essay example that I created to show you what the format should look like being APA. So for APA, there's a cover page. So you're going to put whatever the title of your essay is right here. Your name's going to go here, and then it should look like this: West Salem High School, English 9, Mrs. Albritton, and the date. I usually just do like the due date to help me remember when it's due. When you scroll down, the actual essay just comes right after that, and it should be double spaced, 12 point Times New Roman font. And then when you're done, at the very end, you need to have a reference list, and it should look like this. So this is according to APA format, referencing Trevor Noah's book. If you quote anything else or you use some sort of source that's not just directly in the book, you need to cite that as well, and this is where you would put that. So if you scroll down all the way to the bottom, I've given you some links that are super, super helpful. So this is what I was given when I was in high school, and it's still a really great key. So this is called The Owl at Purdue. So Purdue University has their own website with all different types of essay formatting and showing you examples of what that looks like and what is required. So if you click on this link, it's going to show you the general format. So that's basically everything that I just showed you. So you can scroll down and it shows you what it should look like roughly. Okay. If you click on this, this will show you what the reference page should look like. And in MLA terms, it's the same thing as works cited. So you're just showing your sources and where you got something. So this will show you how to do that. And then the last link shows you in-text citations, because if you're going to quote directly from the text, even if you're going to paraphrase, you need to tell me like what page that is and all that. So that'll show you what to do there. So if you're doing the essay, look at these things, look at this example. This is going to be what I'm looking for when you submit your essay in terms of the formatting, and it's going to help you greatly if you decide to go to college after high school, because this is probably what they're going to ask of you. And like I said, there will be moments in class that I built in for kind of like a workshop time for you to get help, ask questions, so you're not just kind of doing this all on your own at home with no help. So that's the essay example. And then this is the Canva model example. So again, I'm asking you for 5 items, but I'm only showing you 3 on here because I didn't want to take everything away from what you might include in yours. So it should look something like this. This is using Canva. There's images. I have an image, a picture to represent something that is directly correlated to the quote itself, right? And then I'm showing you that there needs to be 5 examples, so I left space for 2 because I didn't want to do everything. But it's a quote to show your understanding of something that was really important in his childhood, something that made him who he is. And you're going to represent that not only in the quote, direct quote, or paraphrase from the text, but also an image or an icon. And if you scroll down, your references should also be there, something like that. So that's the example. If you have any questions about this, please ask me. I'm giving you so much time ahead to look at this and to get familiar with what I'm requiring, and just so you can, feel like it's not kind of just coming at you really quickly, because the school year is going to go by quick. The end is going to come really quick, but I want you to have this information as soon as possible. Okay, so this week we are reading chapter 3. And then for your asynchronous work, you are doing chapter 4. So if you were in class for our first synchronous day, we will be reading chapter 3. I'm not going to read it over this video because that would take too long. So that would also be on you to do that since you're absent if you're watching this video. The last thing I need to show you is your other asynchronous assignment other than reading. So you are going to watch this video. I said I think week 1, Trevor Noah is the current host of The Daily Show. And so on his show, he did a little segment where he traveled to South Africa back home, and he has a conversation with his grandmother, and you're going to listen to that and watch that. And then there are these questions in Canvas that you will answer as a response. So that is Synchronous Day 1. All right, so Synchronous Day 2. Today we're going to look at one of our vocabulary words, and that is empathy. So we talked about this a little bit last week. You told me that empathy is kind of when you put yourself in somebody else's shoes. It's kind of different from sympathy is what I got from most of you. So let's take a look at this. So what I want you to do is pause this video and click this one. This is Brene Brown on empathy. She talks about empathy, describes what it is, and gives you a really helpful kind of metaphor or example using these characters. So I want you to pause this video and watch this one and then come back. Go ahead and do that. Okay, so after watching that video, I want you to tell me in your own words, what is the difference between sympathy and empathy? And then I want you to kind of create a quick list of what are some practical ways you can show empathy to somebody else based off of what we watched in the video. So go ahead, pause this video and respond to those questions. Okay, so sympathy, from what she says in the video, drives disconnection, while empathy fuels connection. So if we look at these two images, you see somebody who's struggling, they're having a hard time, and there's another person getting to their level and showing that, hey, I understand what you're going through, and I'm sorry, that sucks. Sympathy is kind of when you are not close. You're just like, oh, that's too bad. You don't really genuinely care, and you can't really relate in any way, and so you're very distant. So, some takeaways. If we want to try to become more empathetic people, which I think we should, I think the world needs more of that, to have the ability to take the perspective of another person. Sometimes there's going to be moments where you meet another person or you're talking to somebody and you just can't relate to something they're going through because you haven't actually gone through something like that or something similar. And that's okay. We don't all have to be the same person. But if you can do your best to try to understand their perspective, it helps. While also making sure that you are not judging. You're not kind of creating any type of judgment, whether you are verbally telling that to them or even just thinking about it. And then just being able to recognize the emotion in other people and communicating that. Like, oh, I see that you are frustrated. I see that you are angry. Being able to recognize that and just kind of name it, it's very helpful. To give you an example, from my own personal experience, I have had, unfortunately, to experience loss many times in my young life. There was a period of time over, I think, 8 years where I lost 6 people in my family for various different reasons. And something that I learned out of that is that when somebody's grieving, for example, it's not always helpful to try to avoid talking about it. Sometimes people, when they're around somebody who's grieving, it can be awkward and they're not sure what to say. But kind of acknowledging the fact that they're grieving and that they've lost somebody and saying, I see that you're sad and I see that this is just really difficult, that you've lost somebody, that really helps with trying to be empathetic, whether or not you've actually gone through what they're going through. Empathy is feeling with people, and empathy is a choice. Absolutely. Which connects us to this quote we talked about in week 1 from that crash course video. Reading is always an act of empathy. It's always an imagining of what it's like to be somebody else. That's one of the main reasons why I love stories. I love reading. That's why I chose to be an English teacher, or one of the many reasons, because being able to read different books and stories allows you to connect with people in ways that you might not have originally, and it allows you to kind of grow your sense of empathy as best as you can. All right, so we're going to do an activity. In the next couple slides, I'm going to click through them, and I'm not going to say anything, but all I want you to do is take a moment. I'm going to probably pause for like 6 or 7 seconds on each slide, and I want you to try to just make some observations and inferences about what you think we're going to be talking about this upcoming week and what you think, how this is going to be connected to Trevor Noah's book. So again, I'm going to go through the slides, and all I want you to do in your mind is just try to make some inferences and observations. Slide number 1. Okay, so after looking through those images, I want you to tell me in the slides what comes to mind when you look at them. What is something, what do you think these images mean in connection to our nonfiction unit? I have some sentence frames down here if this is going to help you to kind of fill in the blank, or you can just write whatever your response is. So take a moment, pause this video, and do that. So, what was the point of that activity? Well, it's connected to this movie that we're going to be watching. This is called Green Book, and it's based off of a true story that is set in 1962. So I wanted to give you kind of an idea of the time period and era that we'll be looking at for the next week or so, because that's important specifically with the story and kind of the historical context behind what's going on. So we're going to look at this movie and look at, again, at our 2 essential questions. How is our identity shaped by culture and society? And how does empathy change the way that we view others? So both of those questions are going to be something we'll look at with this story and try to do some comparing and contrasting with Trevor Noah and his book. So to give you a sneak peek, I've included the trailer in the slides, so you can go ahead and pause this video and take a look at the trailer, and then we'll keep going here. All right, and then lastly, we have First Chapter Friday. So this is a historical fiction. We're all about the historical time periods right now. This is a historical fiction novel called Salt to the Sea, and if you click the next slide, you will find a book trailer for that. So you can go ahead and take a look at that. And that is all I have for you for week 3. If you have any questions, please let me know. But I will see you soon.